Michael Roper. This is going to be episode number 493. Welcome to Smart Buildings Academy podcast. Today's episode is going to be about a variety of topics. Today, we're going to do a roundtable meeting, and we have our team members here from Smart Buildings Academy. We have Matt Scott here. Go ahead and wave to
Hi.
everybody, Matt, there, and say hi.
Yep. Hi.
And we got our newest member of the Smart Buildings Academy team. This is going to be Ethan Morris right there. And we're excited today. Hello. Yes, very good. We're very excited today to be going over these topics, and all of our information covered in this episode can be found on our website at podcast.smartbuildingsacademy/493. Okay, so we got the intro out of the way. We can go and get into some topics. Are you guys ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Ready.
Let's do it. All right. The first topic we're going to talk about today is IT. IT is becoming a big deal in building automation systems, as we know, and we've seen that with our students. And I'm just going to got a couple of questions here that we could talk about. And what I'd like to know is what you're hearing from your students that you teach in your classes. What's the current state of collaboration between the IT departments and the BAS teams? And we'll go ahead and start off with Matt just to kind of get his opinion on that, and we'll go around the round table here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Michael.
Uh-huh.
So I think that the collaboration is improving, but still inconsistent. So in many organizations, the BAS is historically operated as an independent from IT, but I think it's starting to integrate more. But I think there's still a lot of gaps that persist. And I think that there's still a lot to do, because I think that the older facilities, the smaller projects, are still feeling like they're isolating the BAS and they're not even utilizing it. In a lot of cases, they don't even have a BAS, and we're still trying to integrate and upgrade those. And so I think there's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. What do you think, Ethan? What do you think about this question here?
So I think that nowadays the collaboration between BAS teams and IT departments is probably the greatest that it's ever been, because we're seeing more of like IT network controllers being brought into the BAS space. So there has to be a little bit more collaboration between the two entities to make sure everything works correctly. I think it's a little bit stronger in larger sites, larger buildings. I don't think smaller buildings probably have near as much collaboration between the two yet, but I think as we go on, in the future, I think that we're going to see a lot more collaboration as time goes on.
Yep, very good. Good feedback, Ethan. Did you have something to add, Matt, on that one? Or?
No, yeah, I
absolutely
agree. I think that we're gearing towards that, but there's still some gaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in my opinion, really, I think it's becoming it's a necessity to collaborate between IT and BAS with the upcoming of AI, with the cloud networks and Internet of Things, the IoT. Everything's going to be on the network, so the IT departments are expecting more interfacing with vendors and manufacturers on these different systems to integrate with the IT departments. So yeah, I think that's becoming more of a collaboration, and we're also focusing more in our classes on training technicians on specific IT tasks, so they'll be familiar with that.
Yeah, and do you think that there's still some reluctancy from the IT department because some of the BAS teams don't have that same capability or knowledge when it comes to IT? There's still kind of that knowledge gap, right?
Yeah, really there is, because IT, unless they have a background in IT, they're not going to have those skills. Now, it's evolved over the years. Whenever I first started in the field, we just put the supervisor on the network and that was it. And nowadays, I mean, there's every controller. We even have RIB relays now, or some kind of relays that could be on the network. So we're monitoring everything. It's becoming more common. So there's going to be more collaboration.
Yeah, no, I agree. And as you mentioned, I mean, in our classes, we're teaching that as well. So we're trying to bring up those guys to speed, or the BAS teams up to speed. And so I think we are getting there. And I think that's really important to mention.
Yep. Very good. All right. Good feedback. Another question I have is, do you guys feel like the BAS devices are being treated as IT assets yet with the upcoming, popularity of BACnet over IP? Do you guys feel like these are becoming more like IT assets?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And kind of what we just mentioned, I mean, everything is being brought up into the network now. And so I think that we're tracking those devices and we're keeping those integrated with our building system. So I do think that they are becoming assets and it is gearing that way because everything is becoming on to the network or
Yep,
getting on the network.
definitely. Yep. You have anything on that, Matt or Ethan?
Yeah, I would say they are, especially nowadays. But I think there's still some older controls lines that are out there that aren't included in the
Mhm.
IT asset list yet, per se.
Yeah.
But again, I think as time
Mhm.
goes on, we're going to see more IT integration with controls, and I think eventually IT departments and BAS professionals are going to have to work hand in hand even more closely as we go on. So, yes,
Definitely.
I do think that BAS devices are
Mhm.
being treated as IT assets nowadays.
Yep, and I'm definitely gonna agree with that too. I think they are, IT assets now, the more than what they used to be, and of course, like Ethan said, it depends on the vendor and the type of
Mhm.
controller and all that stuff. But
Right.
IT departments now they know, especially in new construction, because it's in the specifications where they have to allot these controllers to be on their network. They have to. It's in the spec. So
Right.
they have
Yep.
to. That requires IP planning. Okay, they have to have enough switches and IP addresses to hold all those controllers on the network. If there's any VLAN assignments like virtual local area networks,
Mm.
they're going to have
Yep.
to think about designing that too for the building automation system because some of these systems, as you guys know, can have 500 VAV boxes on it. There could be
Yep.
huge systems with multiple supervisor controllers.
Yeah.
Also, firewall considerations too.
Mm.
There was a security issue at a retail store. I forgot which one it was, but it was through a building automation controller.
Mm.
So that is a
Yikes.
serious issue, and they this was in the national news, so everybody heard about it, and so they are going to treat these as IT assets, and they're going to make sure that they have proper, firewall security to protect their system. So yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a lot of talking there.
But
No, no,
no,
no. You're good.
absolutely.
That was good.
Okay, now my last question on IT. This is something that's really important here. What are the risks of not coordinating with IT during your BAS deployment? What's the risk of not talking to your IT department?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a bunch of risks. I would say, and you kind of just touched on it, but the vulnerability of the security, right?
Mhm.
I mean, if you have default passwords or open ports, unpatched firmware, I mean, all of these can create some attacks,
Oh yeah.
and they're pretty vulnerable when you just have a default password to something. I mean, if it's 1 2 3 4, or 0 0 0 0, these are sadly common mistakes and easy ways to get into systems.
Oh
So
yeah.
I think the vulnerability is a really big issue.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
security issues. Good. What do you think, Ethan?
Yeah.
So I was gonna say security risks.
Mhm.
You know, IT departments requesting passwords or credentials on a lot of our stuff nowadays. Network misconfigurations,
Mm.
IP address conflicts. These are just some things that would go along with as risks of not coordinating with an IT department as a BAS professional.
Mhm.
You're better off to do these things ahead of time before you start integrating controls into a building, or if there's a new upgrade or something. These things are huge risks, and they could take a lot of time, labor time, as you
Yeah.
go throughout the job. So I think all
Mhm.
these things need to be laid out before you even start. The collaboration and communication needs to happen early so you can avoid these risks.
Yep.
Definitely.
Yeah, good. I definitely agree. Yeah, security is a big issue. I'm gonna go with something a little bit different, and based on my experience in the field, project delays.
Mm.
This is a risk of not coordinating with IT. You get your all your controllers in, especially today. If you get if everything's a backnet over IP job, and you forgot to go talk to the IT guy before to get all your IP addresses to make sure there was all
Mhm.
available. And usually we're going to be at the
Yeah.
very end of the job when everything's rushed anyways, and you forgot to do that. Well, the IT guy's busy too, and he's doing other things, and he's going to put you at the back of the list because he
Mhm.
doesn't even know if your controller's safe enough to be put on the network. And that's one thing you got
Right.
to
Right.
do to communicate is to make sure they have all the information required to be able to put on their network safely, okay, according to their
Yep.
standards. They also
Sure.
have checklists too. I mean, I was reading an OEM yesterday, and it had a nice little template that you can go talk to your IT professional with at the job site and just get their IP
Mm.
addresses and just fill it out and go from there. And it gives them all the information about their controllers and all their certifications and all their standards. And that makes the IT person feel, you know, confident about putting the stuff on their system. So
Hmm.
that's what I would say, project delays. And if you forget
Yeah.
that, you're going to be waiting a little bit longer, and there's going to be people potentially not too happy with you that you don't have your project
Oh
done
yeah.
yet. And you're waiting
Right.
on IP
Yeah.
addresses.
Yeah.
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 Not necessary. Yeah.
All right. Well, that was some good discussion on IT. What we're going to do now is we're going to move off onto a different topic, and we're going to talk about specifications. That's one thing we do teach at Smart Buildings Academy. Even in our beginner classes, as technicians, how to read a spec.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is why some of these questions here. My first question I have for everybody is, now we're not picking on design engineers because I know everybody gets busy sometimes and things
That's
get
right.
missed, but we want to give some
Yeah.
feedback from the field side here. What are some examples of maybe a poor or incomplete BAS spec that you've seen, you know, in your history? You don't have to name names or anything like that, and dox people,
Yeah.
but
Well, as a design engineer, I did see this all the time, but I saw a lot of copy and pasting specs, and then not just copy and pasting, but when going through it, clearly there were things that needed to be omitted, didn't read over it. Because
mm,
copy and pasting is fine if they're trying to get a baseline for what they're trying to spec. But when you have outdated technologies or systems that are just irrelevant, if you have something in there that, doesn't apply to your system, or say it's a different kind of VAV unit. And so those happen all the time. Copy and paste seemingly saves time, but
mhm,
sadly, a lot of times it just ends up making things take longer, delaying
yeah.
things, or confusing and muddying the water. So a lot of copy and paste from what I've seen from other engineers, not myself.
Oh yeah, not you, Matt. Of course.
Yeah. Not
Right.
you.
We'll have to ask some of your customers on that one. I'm just
Yeah, that's
kidding.
right.
Yeah. Let me get some verification on that.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What do you think, Ethan?
I'll
Have you
add
seen
to that.
anything? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So I've got a couple examples of this. I would, like Matt said, copy and pasting or not updating when things change. In my time in the field, I saw a couple of drawings that had different manufacturer equipment on
Mm,
it. So, for
Mhm.
example,
sure.
they originally had spec'd LG equipment for this job, but then eventually it got changed to Daikin equipment, but they never changed the drawings or the spec to match.
Mm,
Oh,
So we got it
okay.
was yeah, it was not a great time. But then also, I think me and you had talked about it there a couple weeks ago, Michael. Some drawings where feel like they're rushed. They don't double check what they put in. And again, not being mean here, just
Mm,
experiences. But where they would have a VAV box with the control panel side 6 inches from the wall, where you
yeah,
can't,
not
somebody
right.
that's a field technician can't even get their head in there to look up and see what to
Mm,
do or what the problem is.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
then, wiring schematics can be wrong. They have like sometimes I've had one where they put DC and AC voltage together and it did it didn't
Uh-oh.
work out real well. Yeah. So, but I would say, yeah, just the take their time, go read
Mm,
through it, double check everything, which I know when there's jobs being started up, it's a time game. So you're trying to get
mhm.
things out the door and done as quickly as
Right.
possible. But on the flip side of that, that can come back to bite somebody and cause more time for the
Oh,
job to be
yeah.
complete too. So it's kind of
Mhm.
a double-edged sword.
Yep, yep.
yeah, definitely. And I will add to that. I think sometimes that something that gets lost there with design engineers, that they're trying to design for every system. And sometimes I think some of that gets broadened and ambiguous to where maybe they're
Mm.
not necessarily super knowledgeable on
Mhm.
some of those systems specifically. And I think sometimes that might get lost in the mix. And so when
Mhm.
you're looking at that and seeing a DC and AC, that engineer might not even understand what they're doing wrong as well, because they're
Mhm.
trying
Right.
to juggle so many other systems within the
Right.
design. And
Oh
so
yeah.
I think sometimes the specs are very specific, right? I mean, it's what they are,
Mhm.
Right.
but not necessarily does the engineer always understand what they're specing either. And I think there is a lack of knowledge in some cases, and maybe something to address in the future.
Mhm. Yeah, and that kinda leads us to another question here too, is like, if you see these things like in a spec, how can BAS professionals like us and
Mm.
whoever's listening
Mhm.
here give feedback without stepping on toes or upsetting somebody? Do it in a diplomatic way. How what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think having relationships with the engineers is probably one of the most important things, because if
Mm,
you have a trust with somebody, you can, talk on a professional level without feeling like you're stepping on toes or you're criticizing someone. And
m'kay.
so if you can, and I guess on top of that, showing the engineer that you're educated and that you know what you're talking about. If you
Oh,
can
yeah.
display that knowledge, I
Mhm.
think that can build trust with the engineer, and
Mhm.
then you can kind of have that conversation that suggests that feedback.
Yeah. Good. I like that. Good. What do you think, Ethan?
So, for me, at the end of the day, we're all human and we are all going to make mistakes. Doesn't matter what side of the coin we're on, whether we're in the field installing these things or starting them up, or if we're the engineer that's drawing this stuff up. We all make mistakes. And I think if we, a lot of times, when I was in the field, I would see people come to talk to somebody with a little bit of aggression or a little bit of hatred in their heart for it. But we have to remember we're all human, we make mistakes. So you need to come in with a clear mind,
Mm,
let them know like, hey, this is wrong, but it's not a huge deal. Like we can get past this, but let's talk, let's communicate, let's work together on fixing this and
mhm.
getting to a good solution.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I think another good thing that field technicians could do is instead of portraying like we are the end all be all on what we found is wrong, um, we need to be humble about it and approach these engineers as like a collaborator instead of
Mm,
somebody that's trying to
right.
show somebody that they're wrong or I'm better than you. We
Mhm.
collaborate with them.
Yeah.
It's not a I'm better, you're better. We all have to get the job done at the end of the day. So let's work together and get it done.
Right.
Yep.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And I think, what I would do, not to step on toes and be very diplomatic and, just experience and working with design engineers when I was in sales before, just do the things that's supposed to do it, by the book. Submit an
Yeah.
RFI, request for information.
Exactly.
That's a good way to do
Yep.
it. "What did you mean
Yep.
by this? Did
Absolutely.
you mean this?" Kinda guide them a little bit. Say, "I caught
Yep.
this. What do you think about this?"
Yep.
Or
Right.
request for clarifications. So make sure you get those too as well. Also, a
Yep.
good thing to do too is if you're a building automation company, you need to go over there and help those engineers lay that out. I mean, that's going to help you be the basis of design anyways with your controller. So
Yeah.
you
Right.
should be helping
Absolutely.
the engineer as a BAS professional, put the sequences on there, review the spec and make sure it's in line and it makes sense. A lot
Agreed.
of times, you'll see set points that are just blank, and it lets anybody choose whatever an adjustable set point to put in there, and usually the engineer should be putting that in there, I think, based
Mhm.
on their, building design, heat
Yeah.
loads and all that stuff.
Agreed.
So,
Yep.
um, anyways, those are some
Yeah,
things I
no,
thought about. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, and not only just marking up or writing RFIs, but also
Mhm.
marking up the specs, and if there's any drawings or sequence of operations, not being afraid to mark things up, but also,
Yeah.
like you said, be diplomatic about it,
Yeah,
'cause
yeah, yeah.
I know a lot of times, from the design side, getting red line drawings back
Yeah.
and
It's like you get a
and
bad
and
grade at
looking at
school or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
right,
Like you
so
got an
there
F.
it is
Yeah. Well, nobody likes to be
a
wrong. I don't even
dance.
like to be wrong sometimes.
Yeah,
So,
right.
Yeah.
So
never,
there is
but,
a song and dance.
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
exactly.
right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what makes for a strong clear BAS scope of work? What would help make a strong scope to begin with?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is probably just having a defined sequence of operations,
Mhm,
making sure that everything is spelled out properly. So when and I think that's the most challenging thing as well. I mean,
mhm,
as we're teaching this to our students, I can tell the sequence and understanding the entire sequence of operations is probably one of the more challenging things to map out on a points list and to understand what all is going on in that system. I think that's
Mhm.
one of the hardest things to do. So I
Yeah.
think the more clear and definable it is, the easier it is to understand and also easier to build and to create as a system.
Yeah. Very good. I like that. What do you think, Ethan? Anything to add to that, or I was just
Um,
gonna
yeah, no, that's fine.
yeah.
I would say clear BAS scope. I would say it needs to be practical.
Mhm.
Sites with site spec I think, Matt was talking about this, but having site-specific sequence of operations for things,
Yeah.
Yeah,
instead of just
definitely
the
site
copy paste.
specific. Yep.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
definitely helps things, especially people in the field. I
Mhm.
think it would need to spell out any training and commissioning,
Yeah.
and then documentation expectations also should be in there.
Yeah, I think if
And
it's like
then
a remodel, or an add-on, or a retrofit, it
Yeah,
needs very
retrofit.
special attention by a BAS professional, I would think, to go out to the job
oh,
site
yeah,
and look at the equipment and see what it's gonna take
right.
to, change it out. Because sometimes you will see plan and spec change outs, remodels and things
Yeah,
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's even more challenging from a retrofit standpoint. If
Mhm.
you're starting new and these are just brand new
Yeah.
equipment and everything is,
It's all
the
calculations, right? So,
yeah, it's
oh,
all
at
yeah,
that point
exactly, all up to
yeah.
spec at that point. But yeah,
So,
the retrofit can be more
there's a
challenging.
lot of variables, that could affect the system in a retrofit.
oh, yeah,
Yeah. Definitely. Also, I wanna add to the, clear BAS scope. I think
Yeah.
having good points lists in terms of, like, naming conventions,
Mhm.
and so that everybody can clearly understand what is being defined is also
Yeah.
pretty important.
Oh, yeah, true. Good point. And you identify all the points that have to be controlled too, as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, good. That was a good topic. Now we're gonna move to something technical. You guys wanna talk about something technical now? We're gonna
Sure, let's
go
go.
to VAV boxes, I think. Hang on, let me see here. Not owner training. We're gonna go to oh, here it is. Um, well, there it is. I lost my, questions here. So we're going to talk about the trend logs, the role of trend logs in BAS troubleshooting. Okay, because I'm a real big fan of trend logs, and I think they're very
mhm.
valuable as a tool for the BAS professional during startup and also during in service. So my first question I have here is, why are trend logs so underused or even improperly configured in many systems we see today? I remember when I first started in the field, and I'd go up to an existing building because I worked in BAS service at one point, and hardly anybody was ever using trends ever. Like every owner I'd go to, you never see any trends unless it was set up at the beginning of the project. And I think that's a shame. And you see all kinds of issues going on, after hours and things like that, that they could be using trends on. So
Yeah.
that's just kind of our question there. What do you think about that, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think a lot of times they're just not set up at all.
Hmm.
And I assume, or my gut is saying, that it's mainly because projects are trying to be closed out too fast or too soon, where it's
Hmm.
not I wouldn't say a rush job, but it is an afterthought, and so maybe in that way, I guess it is a rush job. And I also think that maybe just the lack of a standard, and so if if a standard isn't followed through, then I think it kinda gets lost in the mix, and so I would say,
Yeah.
probably it's rushed more than anything, and then on top of that, once you don't follow your own standards or you don't have any standard of operations, then it kinda just gets lost.
Hmm. Yeah. And this can pertain, by the way, to existing building or new construction too, as well. Yeah.
Sure.
On that. Now, what do you think, Ethan?
So I'll piggyback off of what Matt said, but I
Hmm.
think a lot of times trend logs are underused or they're not configured right. A lot of that would have to do with facility teams, I think, and
Yeah.
them being
Yeah.
unsure on either one, how to use a trend log, or two, how to set one up if there isn't one. And like
Yeah.
Matt
Hmm.
said, where a lot of this feels like it's because it's rushed to try and get to final sign off on the job. I don't
Hmm.
think that there's enough owner training done for the facility teams to
Yep.
even
Yeah.
know what a trend log is. I
Hmm.
think, like he said, I think it's a little bit of an afterthought.
Yeah.
But I think if they can allot some time to show facility members or people that are going to be using the system, well, here's a trend log, here's what it does, here's how you can
Hmm.
set one up. I think that would help in every aspect of them being underused or improperly configured. I think if you give the facility owners or maintenance personnel that are going to be using the system the ability to set those up and fix them or use them correctly, I think they'd be
Mhm.
used a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll agree with that too, Ethan. I think it's just really, on an existing building type of project, if you walk up on those, it's a training issue. Obviously, that's probably a training issue, and it could be a time issue.
Yep.
They got a lot of band-aids to fix in a building usually, and a lot of things to fix,
Mhm.
and they don't have time to do trends. So
Yeah,
that could be another
exactly.
issue. I mean, they're low on their workforce in most buildings, and they're just trying to survive. But really, if you
Right.
think about it, the trends can help you save
Oh,
more time
absolutely.
if you can predict and pinpoint an issue that happens when you're not around. That can definitely help you on that. So I think
Yeah,
it's
Oh, yeah.
training and time. Yeah.
yeah, I agree, and maybe a little bit of lack of foresight as well, because
Mm,
like you just said, I mean, it kind of, triggered something, but it obviously can help in the long run, but I think a
mhm,
lot of times that doesn't get, seen, and so I think there is a lack of foresight, for a lot of, managers or facility managers, and
mhm,
probably, as you mentioned, it's more because it's just another task, another thing to do when they have so many other aspects of their building they have
mhm.
to manage, and so I think it's just a lack of that
Yep.
foresight.
Well, and I wonder too about if, like, maybe someone higher up in the facility tells them, like, maybe they don't think that trend logs are that usable or they don't need them.
Sure,
So I wonder if
influence.
they
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah, so I wonder if maybe there's a little bit of higher up influence on these sites where they say, "Well,
Yeah.
why do we even need the trend? All this stuff's
Mhm.
brand new." Or
Yep.
like Michael said, if it's a new building, a new project, they may say, "Well, we can save money and time if we don't have to have somebody come set all the trends up for all this stuff." Well, that's
Mhm.
less cost. So why do we need
Yeah.
them? So maybe there
Yep.
needs to be a little bit more talk between BAS professionals and the facility owners or operators on,
Mhm.
here's what trends do. They'll help you a lot. Trust me, if you
Yeah.
need them.
Like
Maybe
specific
that would help
training.
some
Yeah.
too. Yeah,
Like for
yeah,
troubleshooting. A lot of
right.
times too, trends we got to remember is also for compliance. You might have a
Yep.
hospital where you have to record the CO2, humidity, and temperature
Oh yeah,
for weeks at a
that's
time
true.
and download it and send it to the, compliance people and all that
Yep.
stuff.
Right.
So that's another thing they got to
Yeah.
do as well. Okay, good. I got another question here, and it has to do with the storing trends and like a supervisor. So, what would be the best way to effectively set up trending without flooding the network with information? Because
Yeah,
obviously, you can make a trend for everything if you wanted to.
right.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Um, I would say that we need to make sure that we have compressed data
Hmm.
because I before archiving, because I think, the less data that we're inputting into the network means the less we flood it, and so I think making sure that we have that all compressed is probably something that's key when we're
Hmm.
just putting and dumping,
Yeah.
data into the network. It needs to be at a smaller rate.
Yes, I agree. What do you think, Ethan?
So I think the best way to set those up would be doing only critical points.
Hmm.
Some things that are a little bit more pertaining to like temperatures or valves, air handlers, those things.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
then
good point.
Yep.
to cut down on data, I would say using like a COV trend, like change of value trend,
Oh yeah. Good.
Mhm.
where it would
Yeah.
it would track just a
Right.
change of value instead of every 15 seconds, 20 seconds, however you
Interval.
have them set up. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
No,
that could
that's
also
good.
help too.
And to
Yeah.
piggyback
And
on
then
what Ethan was saying, you can also set up for a trigger too. So anytime a certain something happens, then you can start trending. You could
Yeah.
also schedule as well. We were doing this in class yesterday, weren't we? Ethan, in that class I was
oh
teaching on
yeah,
the schedules, so or on the trends.
yeah,
So there's a
yeah.
lot of different ways you could do that. Then also you could set it up. A lot of these softwares these days have it to where you can, write over what was first entered, the FIFO, first in, first out. So take
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
data that was first entered and just rewrite over it once it exceeds a certain set point on there. So you can manage your data that way, or you could have a BAS server if you really need to. There's some instances where you have
Mm.
to record a lot of data, like maybe a hospital project or a semiconductor manufacturing that's has to have precise air conditions, and you have to record that and send it to their compliance people.
Yeah, definitely.
One question I would ask for that is I wonder if
Mhm.
there's a way that you could enable some sort of cloud storage for
Oh,
trend
yeah.
data.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. Yeah, they do that these days for sure. Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Probably do a
That's
video
awesome. That's
or
a good idea.
another podcast on that or something.
Yeah.
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 It'd probably be a good one. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, how can trend data help identify hidden issues that one might not be known to do? Is there any examples that you guys can think of, like some hidden issues that trends can help us with?
Um, yeah, I would say there's definitely quite a few things. I don't know about hidden, but
Yeah, it
they are
doesn't have to be hidden.
issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely any time where we are trying to verify our sequence of operations so that they're
Mhm.
functioning as the design engineer had intended. I think if we can take a look at the data and something seems off, I guess, that maybe that could be something could be wrong in the sequence of operations, and
Yeah.
that might be a more hidden or subtle thing that or a subtle issue that might not be detected otherwise.
Mhm. Right.
I also think that it also spots the intermittent faults that we have, so any short cycling, so if a air handling unit turns on or off, often, like, maybe every 5 minutes because it satisfies the load too quick. We'll be able to
Mhm.
see that, jumping on and off and that energy usage, and we'll notice that from the trend data. So I think it can point out any of that short cycling that happens in our buildings or when we have drifting temperatures, stuff like that.
That's a good point. I like that. Energy efficiency. So yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
Yeah,
For
definitely.
sure.
Uh,
Yeah.
Ethan,
Yeah. What
what
do
do
you
you
think,
think?
Ethan?
So one of the reasons I love trend log so much is because it's also a great way to tell if someone has forced a point on and left it.
Oh yeah.
Mm,
So
Yep.
if somebody
true.
forces a hot water valve or something open and then they
Mm.
call you and say, "Hey, it's incredibly hot in here. Please come help." And the first thing I do is pull up the graphic, look at the trend log and see, well, dang, this hot water valve's been open for 3
Yeah.
weeks. Well, why?
That's why it's
Right.
so hot.
And then yeah, and then so come to find out, maintenance personnel had forced it on. They were trying to troubleshoot something, they forgot that they had forced it, and then, I get the
Mhm.
call because they think it's a control issue, but
Huh.
just operator error happens sometimes, so
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
but,
definitely.
Definitely.
but I think something like that, it can help, identify issues with something that somebody has left on or forced on and left that way. It could help with any kind of programming issues that we're having if program gets messed up or isn't acting right. Trend logs something over many days that can show you, variances in how if it's not operating correctly.
Yep.
So trend logs are awesome. I love trend logs.
Oh yeah. Those are all great items on that. The one thing I'm going to add is to justify fixes or replacement.
Mm,
Mhm.
Okay,
sure.
so
Oh, yeah.
if you're like, if you could justify this to the, whoever controls the budget at your company, you could say, well, we're not cooling properly. We're trending our space temperature. It's not
Yep.
quite getting to set point, and we're noticing also our compressors keep short cycling during this time. So
Yeah,
we need to do this.
exactly.
We're getting tenant complaints, so this is going to justify a compressor replacement.
Good
It might
point.
be just getting by. It might be an old compressor just getting by, but that we need to
Mhm.
get it fixed now because we're exceeding our set points. You could show them the chart and everything, what time it is and how much it's going over, all that fun stuff. So
Yeah.
that's what I'll add on that.
No, I agree, absolutely.
Okay. Well, that pretty much ends our topics. We got through pretty much a lot of good questions today, guys. I
Yeah.
appreciate you guys joining us.
Yeah, thanks,
And
Mike.
what we're going to do is we're going to wrap up here. So thank you very much for listening to the Smart Buildings Academy podcast. We hope you learned a lot from this episode. And if you find this episode valuable, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're watching this on LinkedIn, please share this with your network. And as always, this will be available on our website at podcast.smartbuildingsacademy.com/493. All right, we'll see you next week. You guys take care.